Hey guys, I'm Matt Singer,
And I'm Erin Whitney.
and we are here today to talk about Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Although, in the movie, it just says Rogue One.
Oh yeah, there's no subtitle.
There is no subtitle. I don't even think the word Star Wars appears on screen
No,
during
it
this
doesn't.
movie, which is kind of weird. But that's what we're here to talk about, and this is going to be a spoiler review. If you haven't,
So many spoilers.
yeah, we're going to get into it pretty deep in just a minute or two. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, you can find our spoiler-free review on our website, ScreenCrush.com. So this is for after you've seen the movie or before if you really can't wait and don't care about spoilers, because we are going to spoil the heck out of it.
Yeah, you've been warned.
Yes, you have been warned several times. Before we get into that, though, just generally, we thought we would talk about our general impressions of the movie.
Yeah.
Erin.
All right, I'm feeling really mixed about this movie.
Okay.
I liked it. That's
Okay.
my immediate takeaway. I liked it. I didn't love it. I was kind of underwhelmed.
Okay.
That's how I feel walking away from it. I was really excited going into it, especially after all the recent trailers. I was feeling really hyped about the action. And I think coming out of the theater, I was just kind of like, this was all right, but not nearly as good as The Force Awakens.
Yeah, so you were excited about the action. Did you feel like it didn't live up to it, or that wasn't the part? What underwhelmed you about it?
So many things. I thought the action was probably the best part of the movie. Gareth Edwards' directing, I thought, was fantastic. I think this is maybe one of the best looking Star Wars movies, but there wasn't enough of the action sequences. There wasn't enough of the beach fighting, of the space battle. What was there was great, but I wanted more.
Yeah, I think we haven't discussed this really beforehand, other than
Yeah.
like, did you like it or not? And I think we kind of agree almost completely. Like, I was looking forward to this one too, and I liked it too, but I also don't think it compares to Force Awakens. To me, it's definitely a step down from there, and I also agree that the action, special effects, all this stuff, like the last half hour of this movie is spectacular. It's awesome. But I was kind of bored during a lot of the stuff beforehand.
I agree.
And in general, I just found the characters, with a couple of exceptions that maybe we'll talk about, not nearly like The Force Awakens gave us Rey and Finn and Kylo Ren, all these incredible new Star Wars characters who definitely, to me, rate with Luke and Han and Leia.
Completely.
And the characters here, you know, the robot K2SO is a scene stealer. He's funny. He's not, like, I liked him. But all the human characters I thought were totally forgettable, disposable, and just not that great. And so what you're left with is like a good-looking Star Wars movie with lots of cool effects. Gareth Edwards knows how to direct big action.
He does.
And this movie definitely delivers that. If you're looking for awesome space battles, I think Rogue One might be the best like dogfight in space.
Yeah,
that
maybe.
sequence at the end is amazing. But I just feel like if you want like a Star Wars movie that's also like makes you feel like intense things about the characters, this is not that.
This isn't. I feel exactly the
Yeah,
same.
so
I
we
mean,
agree. I don't know. All right, let's get into spoilers. Those are our
Okay.
general thoughts. This is your real last warning
Yeah.
now. If you are still watching now and you're upset about spoilers that are coming,
Too bad.
I can't help you. Yeah, seriously, too bad. Too bad. All right, where should we start? I mean, with the most spoilery thing of all, which I guess would be the ending. Should
Yeah,
we just start
let's
there?
go there.
So I have to say, as much as I didn't, I've already said love these characters, I did the last third of the movie, really more like 30 minutes of the movie, I thought was definitely the best part. And I give the movie total credit for kind of having the guts to go kind of full war movie at the end of this movie,
Yeah.
and to not kind of kiddie movie it out, to not go the easy route and like, have all the characters survive. And
Yeah.
like, it's a pretty bleak ending at times. And, these characters, which again, they don't really do, and I think it could have been even better if they really made us care about these people,
Yeah.
where you really would have been devastated. But still, I mean, I think they did a nice job of making this into basically like a suicide mission.
Yeah, it is.
And really selling that. And again, and not sort of chickening out and finding some convenient way for them to survive or whatever. Like, I give the movie credit for that. Were you surprised at all that at the end of this movie the cast is decimated and all
really,
gone?
not
No,
really. 'Cause
I
I
kind of
think-
wasn't either, but I
yeah.
was glad.
Yeah, I mean,
Not that I wanted them to
appreciate-
die, but I
Right.
just
I mean, yeah, I also appreciate that they went there,
Yeah.
and that it doesn't end on this like perfectly happy, uprising note,
Right.
where everyone's sort of the hero and surviving.
Yeah.
But in the months leading up to this movie, I kept thinking like, okay, what's going to happen? We knew a supposed rumor that it was going to lead up to 10 minutes before A New Hope. So of course, either they all have to die or
They got to go somewhere. It's like if they're
retirement, and we
yeah,
we never
why?
see them again.
That's right. If we don't see them in episode 4, like where did they all go?
Right.
I mean, I guess they could have found some explanation. Maybe they were imprisoned by the Empire or something. But
I kept thinking during the last maybe 15 minutes, like if whether Jin and Cassian would survive, thinking maybe we'll see them as old people in episode 8. It's like maybe they'll be in the background somewhere. But so I appreciate that they all kind of fulfilled their mission, and then they died honorably in this very war movie.
It made sense for this movie in a lot of ways.
It did, but it also to me felt structurally like everyone had their heroic moment, and it was very obvious when that was coming. And then they died, and it just sort of left me feel like I didn't really care that they died because we didn't get enough time to really care about these characters and really care about this unit, this Rogue One unit, which is shoved together so quickly, I thought, and unbelievably, I think, that by the time they're gone, you're appreciative, but you're not really left with any emotions.
Yeah, it's more of a ride than anything else. You're along for the ride, and you do. You like the fact that they had the guts to stick to the sort of the kind of movie they set out to make, and they achieved that. There's a lot of talk about, there were reshoots, there was editing, they were changing the movie, it was too dark, blah, blah, blah. I mean, the movie they made for a Star Wars movie, by the standards of a Star Wars movie, it's pretty dark.
It is, yeah.
And I give them credit for that, because clearly that's what they wanted to make, and they did it, and they didn't back down from that, so credit to them. What about, now another big thing that I think we should talk about in terms of spoilers there's a couple of cameos in this movie.
Yeah.
Some of them were in the trailer, like Darth Vader, they sort of teased, he's going to be in here somewhere, so we should talk about him. And then there are some surprise characters who they haven't mentioned at all, including like C-3PO, pops up with R2-D2 in like one shot, and I'm assuming that was, the usual actors, Anthony Daniels at least.
Probably.
It's his voice anyway. But then they had actors come, in one case, in the case of Peter Cushing, an actor who's been dead for decades, come back to life, essentially, in the form of a CGI version of himself.
Yeah.
And then at the very end of the movie, of course, there's a very quick glimpse of a young Princess Leia. CGI-ea? Is that? I don't know. I'll keep working on that. We're going to work on that. So there's all kinds of characters to talk about in terms of like returning cast members. So let's get into that. Let's start with Darth Vader. We knew he was coming. Were you satisfied with his role in the film?
I was. I think the Vader scenes were my favorite beyond the battles in this movie. The way they were shot, I thought, was fantastic. We first see him and he's in this bath-like water vapor thing, and he's obscured by this mist, and then when he first comes out onto sort of the walkway and he sees Ben Mendelsohn's character, it's just this huge shadow looming over him, and I thought that was really well done, and sort of that was teased in that first trailer where we see Vader.
Yeah, I think that's where all the glimpses you see of him in the trailers are from that scene.
Yeah, so I thought that was great, and there's a couple little moments of humor with the when he puts him in a chokehold.
He chokes him.
Yeah.
And then makes an Arnold Schwarzenegger-esque pun about it.
Yeah.
Do not choke on your aspirations.
Yeah.
That was ridiculous.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to some of those other cameos. I think we got to talk more about like the CGI human beings in this movie.
CGI Tarkin.
CGI Grand Moff Tarkin.
Yeah.
CGI Peter Cushing.
Yeah.
Did he work for you?
I found it really distracting. Yeah, I mean, I kind of knew it was coming because we sort of had that tease in the trailer, and then people were theorizing. And so I assumed we were going to get him in some CGI capacity, but not to the extent. I mean, he is a supporting character.
Yeah, it's an important role in the movie.
And so I was aware of it, and I knew that it was coming, and I couldn't stop comparing his face to Ben Mendelsohn's face, and looking at the lighting, and looking at the texture of the skin, and it looked impressive compared to any other CG human we've seen in a movie, but it was a CGI human. Yeah,
it still very much looks like a not real person.
Yeah.
And I think if you haven't seen the original Star Wars, which is probably unlikely, but even if you have any vague sense of it, you'd be like, who is this guy and why didn't they just cast a human being?
Yeah.
And then if you do know the movie, you're like, well, why didn't they just cast a human actor in a new role, make a different character. Don't bring back this CGI guy, because the whole time we're like, I agree, it's impressive, but it still doesn't look real.
Yeah.
And you're constantly like comparing him to the real thing, to the real actors in the scene.
Yeah.
and to the real Peter Cushing, and it's just very distracting. And it's sort of like, as a sort of sleight of hand magic trick, it's kind of impressive, but as a way to sort of bring you into a story, like, I feel like it totally distracted me in all of those scenes. And the Orson Krennic character, I think, could be very interesting, but I didn't really, he's another guy that we haven't talked a lot about him, but I just didn't think that his sort of, because he'd be kind of fun, because it's just like, he's basically just like a middle manager in space who's like really nervous about his job, and he's like worried basically about his performance review. Like, that's essentially what his arc is. Yeah. And I could get really into that, I think, if the part was written better, and also if he wasn't constantly arguing with a ghost, basically, where you're just kind of like looking. And then, that said, compared to Princess Leia at the end of the movie, which admittedly is like one shot, but compared to her, I thought he looked, like the greatest CGI effect of all time, because I thought she looked actually creepy. Like, I was like, ah, like I recoiled in my seat.
Yeah, and it just feels, I don't know why it was necessary. Did we need to actually spend that much time with those CG characters? Right.
I think Gareth Edwards is a guy who likes special effects. Yeah. He made Godzilla. He's a guy who's comfortable with special effects, and there are times in this movie where that really pays off, like in those big battle scenes.
Right.
But I think maybe putting so much of Tarkin in there was a bit of an overreach.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't think we needed it.
Yeah. The last thing I wanted to mention was there were, I think, not a ton of rumors, but some rumors, some speculation, rightfully so, given the way these movies go, that maybe Jyn Erso would wind up being Rey's mother, or there would be some sort of familial connection between Rogue One and The Force Awakens. And I have to tell you, the fact that they did not do that made me so happy.
Yeah.
I was so relieved that they made a Star Wars movie where there wasn't some sort of distant family connection between all of the characters.
Yeah.
Did you think about that at all? I was so happy that they didn't go there, because I was actually worried that they might.
Yeah, they could have easily. I mean, I think the one thing I do really appreciate about this movie is that it's very much a standalone, and it isn't trying to weave in any other things. It does lead up to A New Hope.
Yeah, and there's a lot of Easter eggs we haven't talked about. Like, if you know the toys and the background characters of the previous movies, you'll spot stuff that's a lot of, it's fun. That's cool, but it's not super heavy with it. And it also, like you said, they're not constantly teasing upcoming movies other than the movie that already exists, which you could go watch as soon as you get out of the theater.
Right, yeah. But yeah, this one doesn't leave you thinking about episode 8 in a way necessarily, because we don't need to, that's a separate story, and it stays a separate story. Yeah. So I'm glad that they wrote these characters separately, but and weren't, that Jyn isn't her mom, and that there's no family connections, but still, I wish that they had written them a little bit more.
No argument here. No argument here. All right, I think that's going to wrap up our spoiler discussion of Rogue One, a Star Wars story, except not, because they didn't put that. It's in the trailers, but it's not in the movie. Oh, did you mind, or what did you think about the no opening crawl?
Oh, I kind of liked it. I kind of liked jumping straight in.
It was kind of cool.
Yeah, but the music is different when we first see the Star Wars title, or not the Star Wars title.
Doesn't say Star Wars, the Rogue One title.
So it's a little weird that they went all out and just did their own thing, and you don't get the Star Wars music. So I kind of liked that it was a little different. I liked how this film deviated, but I did kind of miss, the classic.
They still kept the A Long Time Ago in a Galaxy Far, Far Away. Yeah. Thought that was the right way to go. It's at least to have that. You do kind of miss the crawl, but it does sort of mark this movie as a different thing. Yeah. And I did think that opening shot where it sort of looks like the Star Destroyer, but then it turns out to be the rings of that planet was really cool. Yeah. There's some really cool stuff in the movie. I think we just agree wouldn't have been so bad if maybe the characters were a little more memorable. Yeah. All right, I think that's going to wrap up our discussion. You can find lots more, though, about Rogue One, Star Wars, everything going on in the world of movies at ScreenCrush.com. You can also find more spoiler reviews on our YouTube channel right here where you are right now. I'm Matt Singer.
I'm Erin Whitney.
And we'll see you again soon for another spoiler review.